All right, let me grab the microphone over here and let's get this episode of the RR Show started. You know what? We haven't done, or have we done this in a while? Let me look back at the schedule here. And I don't know, it's not been that long. Let's do a grab bag episode. We're going to do one from ProRevenge, then TIFU, and then let me see here. Have we done this subreddit in a while? Scanning backwards. No, it's actually kind of, okay, it's been a few episodes, but boomers being fools. We're going to get to that and more. Lots of fun stuff coming up here on this episode of the RR Show with me, Vince, and it begins right now. As stated previously, this story comes from r/ProRevenge. Posted by user Broad Ads. Cheat on your wife with mine? I will burn your life to the ground. Way back in the early 2000s, I began to suspect that my wife was up to something. Our two kids were about 4 and 6, still young, but not so young that they couldn't tell you something about what happened in their day. They started talking a lot about staying with my wife's parents during the day, which wasn't really that strange in and of itself. But since they lived about 90 minutes away, doing 2 or 3 times a week seemed a bit much. That was basically every day she wasn't working at her part-time job. When I asked her about it, she denied it, but was never a good liar. So I started tracking the mileage on her car, and sure enough, she was driving an extra 400 or so miles per week. I knew something was going on. Then one day I sat down at the computer and she had left a sticky note with her AOL password written on it next to the keyboard. I could not resist and logged in to read her emails and saw a few email exchanges between her and her college BF, where they discussed how my wife was regularly doing one of her ex-BFs from high school. No mention of details about him other than my wife also talking about his wife and making fun about how she'd gotten fat after having kids. Anyway, I printed out these emails and I stashed them. I still needed to know the details. So I called a friend who was a cop, and he suggested I call a guy he knew that had left the force to become a PI, a private investigator. Ron was great. I paid his retainer and gave him the emails and what little I knew about my wife's activities, and he figured out exactly what she was doing. His report detailed with photos and times, dates, and locations all about how she would take the kids to her parents', then go meet this guy for lunch, then go to a dumpy motel for a few hours, after which she'd pick up the kids and return home. At this point, I hired a divorce lawyer. My parents cheated on each other, and the fallout absolutely messed up my and my siblings' childhood. It was something that was totally unacceptable. I also asked Ron for a couple of more copies of his report and one more thing I wanted him to do for me. On the same day I had my wife served with the divorce papers at her work, I had Ron meet this guy's wife and show her everything he'd found out. She seemed nice, and I figured that she deserved to know what her dear hubby was up to. What she did with that information was up to her. While the information about my wife's infidelity didn't really matter in my divorce proceedings, Bob's wife did a real number on him. According to the publicly available court documents from the divorce and other related proceedings, she cleaned out their joint account, took the kids, and left. As soon as her dad found out what he'd done, Bob was fired, and since her parents actually owned the house where Bob and his wife lived, he also got evicted. Their divorce was ugly. Lots of fighting in and evidently out of court. I guess Bob went to the house and started arguing with his wife, and it escalated to the point of the brother stepping in, and Bob got his nose broken. There were restraining orders and a few more incidences with police reports, criminal charges, jail time, and so on. I can't find Bob on the internet anywhere these days. Last I heard, he'd left the state and his ex-wife did okay. She went to work at her dad's company and took over after he retired. As for me, my ex and I got along well enough. I didn't engage with her on anything that wasn't related to the kids. Now that they're both adults, I don't talk to her at all anymore. I don't hate her or anything, but I only care in the context that she is my kids' mom and is important to them. Nothing beyond that. Our second story is coming from r/TIFU, posted by user MTVAOT. TIFU by saying YouTube Torte Tuli-Os over and over, causing me to lose a job at the literal last minute. Not today, but a little over a year ago, I, a 29-year-old female, had an interview with a company that I nailed. The whole time I was thinking, yes, you got this, while nailing every question. They told me during the interview how impressive my cover letter was, how they wanted me to come do a paid shift to see how the position fit me, and how they thought if this position didn't work, they could look into another location they were opening in 2024. I was ready to get up, give a stellar handshake, and wait for a call I knew was coming. This is until they gave me one final for fun question. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? I knew it was coming, so I had already thought of my answers. I gave my first three and bonded with the three male interviewers on some of our people matching up. With a bolt of confidence, I added that my fourth and final choice was Paul Hollywood from the Great British Bake Off. To my surprise, no one knew who he was or had the love for him that I did. Flabbergasted, I said that I watched the show and had his most recent cookbook. I went to add that I had watched some of his YouTube tutorials, but that's not what came out of my mouth. YouTube Torte Tuli-Os came out. I was shocked and went to correct myself, but I kept repeating YouTube Torte Tuli-Os. It started with just me calmly saying this phrase again to see if it was just a one-time mistake. Apologizing once or twice, it quickly turned into frustration. I began angrily repeating YouTube Torte Tuli-Os, YouTube tutorials, YouTube Torte Tuli-Os over and over, getting more and more frustrated, feeling like I must prove myself. After about 2 minutes, but it felt like 20, the most intimidating of the three men interviewing me said YouTube tutorials, giving me an out. But I had too much pride. I tried saying it once or twice more before saying YouTube videos instead. The interview quickly ended and went from a "we'll schedule a time for you to come and do a paid shadow shift" to radio silence. Who knows what could have been if I had picked Paul Hollywood as my fourth person on my Mount Rushmore. Update. Not to sound cliche, but I didn't expect this to blow up. I had posted this on a different subreddit a long time ago, and only saw recently that it was deleted by moderators. I posted it here hoping a few people would find it funny, and I appreciate all the kind responses and stories of interview fails. It made me feel less alone. Also, thanks Grammar Police and the people who worried for my health. Oddly enough, I've always had bad luck with interviews. From dropping my phone in the toilet right before meeting with the HR rep, to accidentally choking on my own spit and having a coughing fit. And now the well-known Torte Tuli-Os. I am often the candidate that looks great on paper, answers everything perfectly, and then somehow drops the ball in the end zone. I got really paranoid once it started blowing up and deleted a comment with my current situation because I would be absolutely mortified if this somehow was read by the people I interviewed with and didn't want anything that could potentially give away information. Not gonna lie, I came really close to deleting this post altogether just in case. Within 2 months of fumbling this interview, I got a raise and a promotion at my current job. I figured the universe caused me to fail because it knew that this dream position was not the best for me. Now I'm making more than I would have at the other position with better hours. It goes to show that sometimes your dreams aren't always what'll make you happy. Again, thank you guys for laughing at my blunder with me. I'm happy I was able to bring joy to you during these super weird times. Also, if one of the interviewers is reading this, I appreciate you taking the time to interview me regardless of how it turned out. Please forget you read this post, and let's please agree to never speak about this incident again. Our next story comes from Boomers Being Fools, posted by user Throra30197. Done a 6-stage interview to get into a role only to meet the most incompetent boomers on planet Earth. Some years ago, after 250 plus applications, I got an interview for a semi-technical payroll job. It was literally the most insane interview known to man. Cognitive tests, typing speed, what? Personality assessments, and role plays. I eventually got a job and was paired with a 60-plus-year-old woman to show me the ropes. The things I saw in the first few days were absolutely maddening. Some highlights include: 1. Sending protected information via regular email, but typing secure in the subject line. Why are you typing that? And she told me, it makes it secure. I quizzed it further by asking how, and she replied, no idea. It's supposed to be secure, so I'm writing it. Okay. 2. Another boomer was spending days every week working on 2 screens. You weren't allowed to interrupt her because her work was very important. I shadowed her and discovered what was taking her so long. She was manually typing data from one system into the other. I asked why she couldn't just copy and paste the data and she would know it was accurate. Because it's from different systems. 3. One of them didn't understand how to make a new folder on a desktop. 4. They would spread malicious gossip about people that was completely made up. Regularly, blatantly made up nonsense. 5. No windows were allowed to be opened in the boiling hot summer because one of the boomers gets cold, yet she has a blanket around her chair and refuses to wrap it around herself. Anyway, rant over. I could write more, but I'm infuriating myself. It amazes and angers me that overly qualified people are working minimum wage jobs while these dinosaurs take up a seat, outright refusing to learn technology newer than 30 years ago. They also have this air of entitlement, as if we should automatically respect them despite them being quite horrible people. So thanks for being with us. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, please follow or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra nice, you might as well leave a 5-star review. But for more, visit the website, rrshow.com. That is rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince, and we'll see you next time here on The RR Show.